Welcome all to another wonderful session of Joy and Gratitude. I'm Nio Queiro, and my co host is.
Beth Mercurio. Welcome back, everybody. Excited to be with you today. Oh, Neo, I have a topic if you're open to it.
Always open.
So it's very relevant to our listeners who have maybe already joined us. And for those that are just listening, welcome. But for those that listened, I have just a story that I feel like it needs to be told, which is in one of our previous episodes. We talked a little bit about faith and what it meant to us, and in that episode, I shared with everybody about my GPS. And if you remember, my GPS was this beautiful art piece, like a statue that I had gotten in Asheville, North Carolina. She's just incredible and beautiful. And I call her gritty, peaceful soul. When you shorten that, you come up to GPS, right? So we had this beautiful story about how my GPS kind of always reminds me of my inner path and how I look at her every day. And so I just have to share with our listeners that at the end of the podcast, Nima and I were talking, and I still had my beautiful GPS next to me, which she's not usually here. I went and like brought her over for the podcast specifically. And for those of you that are watching, you can see this. And for those of you that are listening, unbelievably, at the end of that podcast, I bumped into her and she fell over and her head literally came crashing off. And there was such this, I mean, Neo, I'm sure I can remember it. She was like, I mean, she lost all her breath.
Yes.
I was like, oh my God. I was like frozen and I really couldn't believe it. But why I really want to talk about this today is because for the first time, I actually listened to my body, I think, before my brain. And and Neo got to witness that. And there
Yeah.
was this moment where I had that, I was holding my breath, and then I thought, am I okay? Like, am I okay? And my body was actually okay. And it then translated, instead of like in anxiety and heart racing and all of the things that typically would have happened to me in that moment of something that I cared so much about breaking, especially because I mentioned before I'm a perfectionist, that would really throw me. I was okay. And then I was able to connect that feeling to my brain, which then said, remember, Beth, you're working on imperfections. So this is perfect because now you'll glue her head back on. And when you see her, you will love her all the same, but be reminded that imperfection is beautiful and that the perfection is in the imperfect. And if we just can really like love who we are and what we are with all of our imperfections, broken head glued back on, doesn't make her any less beautiful than she was prior. And so Neo and I got to share that moment where I actually got to say to Neo, like, because Neo had the same reaction. And I was like, you know what? I'm okay. I'm going to glue her head back on. She's going to have a crack, but the cracks are where the lights come in. And this is like, this is my work. My work is to let it be okay that she is not perfect and that I'm going to look at her with a whole new kind of way when I see her now and realize she's my reminder. She is yet again my path. She continues to be my path to show me the gifts of imperfection. And that is the name of a book that Brene Brown has written that has, been around for a long time, one of her early works, but it has had the most impact on me. So Neo, if you're open to it, I thought it's not a new topic for us, but it is a topic that I think could merit just a little more conversation around imperfection. I have a feeling I'm not the only person out there that struggles with striving for perfection and really trying to lean into what it could look like to embrace imperfection instead.
Oh, absolutely. And I remember at that moment when we were processing what had just happened, that we even started talking about the Japanese and the cracks in the bowls. and how they use gold to unify these broken vessels, and how all of the sudden it becomes a coveted art piece because of the imperfection. Um, and how exciting. I mean, we went from shock to celebration in in a matter of seconds. It was just a real flow and change of perspective. It really is about how we reframe things and how we understand our journey. You know, the imperfections are everything. Um, One of my husband's favorite songs is about scars. And what people don't understand is the wound is the healing. But then when you scar, when you have that imperfection in your body, that means that you have overcome. That is the reminder that you can make it no matter what. And, you know, I have so many scars, and I used to go nuts about them and thought, oh, maybe I should get plastic surgery to cover this stuff up. And now I embrace them as, yeah, you made it through that and that one and that one. And here you are, you're standing, and your journey continues and you're able to see beyond. See, the imperfections are the open door for us to see beyond. We've gone through the journey, we've gone through the pain, we've gone through the hurt. But now that imperfection says you are ready to move forward. And I think that it's the most freeing thing to see an imperfection on you.
I yes, and I will say the beauty for me was this was new, right? It was a new moment. It was a new moment where I realized that you have to do things so many times, right? How many times have I had to say cracks are where the light, the light comes in, and imperfections are beautiful. It just makes it unique. All the things that we keep talking about, but you have to repeat it and repeat it. And so part of what I want to say to people is this idea of practice. It takes time. You need to do things with intention, right? See things like notice again, go back to noticing when things don't sit well with you and then allowing that to be okay, but that it works. And so part of what I wanted to also share was this constant commitment to ourselves to be in this work and remind ourselves over and over again. The beauty is when it actually shows up for you in a way where you're like, I'm actually okay. I'm okay with the imperfect, and I'm going to get excited about it. And the other thing that um, comes from this as well is the people around us. So our children, right? When we accept them as who they are, as imperfect, beautiful, incredible individuals, they get to feel self love in a way that maybe for those of us that have struggled with perfectionism, that was hard for us. I mean, it's certainly, I'll be honest, was hard for me. I still struggle with self love and acceptance. And uh, interestingly enough, a quick story. I think I've mentioned I have small groups of women that I do coach as well. And in one of the groups, we were coming up with a topic because when we meet, the agenda, I always say the agenda is you. We decide what the agenda is as we're there together in community. And so we were together in community. And I said, okay, now as we start this next session together, which is going to be a sequence of different sessions, what should the topic be? And a very brave, beautiful woman said, I would really love it if we could talk about self love and acceptance. And I felt like we all exhaled. We talk about exhaling. It was like we all went, oh, like, I think for a bunch of reasons. One, like, "Oh, does everybody have an issue with that?" Like, I'm not alone, like, you actually wanna talk about self-love as a real like, a problem and something that needs to be discussed in open conversation. That was like a, "Whew," and there was a bit of the, "Ah, that's hard." Like, that's a really hard topic. And so the beauty is that we are gonna be in conversation about that, about self-love and about acceptance and about how when we want to extend that to our children or to the people around us, we really need to understand what it means to believe it for ourselves and to really accept our imperfections. And so I'll certainly keep nuggets coming, but I do feel like there is this invitation starting through this podcast. But how do we get people to start talking more about their own imperfections, their struggles with self love, their inability to accept themselves as enough exactly the way they are? And what does that feel like for people? And what kinds of conversations are they having about it? And if they're not, how do we help them say, find your people? I agree, sometimes it might not feel safe to talk about all of those things. But if you find your connections and you're able to be courageous and you have compassion, which are really the three C's, I'm going to slow myself down and say them really slowly: courage, compassion, connection, which are listed by Brene Brown as sort of the makeups of those are the three gifts, the gifts of imperfection. And maybe we can talk a little bit more right now about those. But those things, with those things, you really are able to be in conversation around imperfection. And it would be amazing if we can all just like, if each one of us starts to be able to talk a little bit more and share a little bit more, that maybe that we'll have that ability to be in community and realize we're not alone and realize that we can learn from each other where we're bumping up and where we're struggling and how we can maybe make little shifts that get us to feel more self-love.
I have to tell you that as beautiful as all that sounds, the struggle is different if you are brown.
Say more.
Generationally, you have been told that you have to work harder, um, have the persona of uh, Black women are the most educated women in the world. That's not by mistake. That is to create acceptance. That is to actually accept themselves. You don't just get a master's, you get a PhD. And even with that, they are the lowest paid. So when you say about self acceptance, you have to also understand that before you can self accept, you have to also analyze what you have been instructed and indoctrinated your whole life to have. And then you have to give yourself the ability to say, I can change that path to be my personal path. But it all requires you finding safety in yourself and trust in yourself to do so. You know, like it or not, when I walk in a room, I'm a very confident person. I'm confident because I've studied and made myself be approved. I know my stuff. I don't walk in there not prepared. But because I come in confident, I'm aggressive. Because I come in confident, I am, you know, um, just a threat. So it's hard to love yourself and accept yourself when everybody's putting all these labels on you.
I First and foremost, let me just say thank you for stopping me and bringing up that very important reality, which is each human's landscape and environmental context is completely different. You're right. And some of it is literally based on color of skin, socioeconomic. There are a million things. So you're right. No, assuming that we're all talking at a level playing field is a massive assumption. And I
Mhm.
just love that you sort of like put the big pause button there to say that's so true, right? So thank you. And and may that be this beautiful lesson in how humans can have a conversation. So I'm still learning, right? I love that you get to pause me and go, Beth, that sounds amazing, but we come from two different worlds, and your level of self acceptance may be different just by the sense of like who you are and how you grew up may be different. And so I love that. I love that you paused us there, and I love that we have enough connection that you could feel comfortable doing that. So thank you, and let us hope that other people can hear that and know that that's the best case scenario, is that you're connected enough to someone that they pause you in the moment that you say something and say, "This is what it felt like for me." So, I think it's
But
a
but I
huge
wanna just
plus.
make sure that you know that what this brings us full circle to is we are all human, and humans cannot move forward to their full authenticity until they accept themselves. The journey may be a little harder. The journey may be a little complex. And my whole purpose was to say, we are not saying this is a panacea. We understand that each one of you were given some limited beliefs. Each one of you were given a different place of growing up. And maybe your journey is different. However, whoever you are, you first have to start trusting yourself. You are okay. You came into this world perfectly imperfect. And that's great because that's the way you learned. That's the way you overcame. And that's the way you're going to be brilliant and amazing throughout your life. But you have to trust yourself. And then you can start accepting yourself by shedding all this external garbage that's being thrown at you because the labels are external. You don't have to accept them. The limited beliefs that were told to you, whether it's physical about your appearance, whether it's about your voice, whatever it is, external. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to accept it. But you do have to accept that beautiful person that's in the mirror.
I I love that, and I think there's something to be said around, though I'm still thinking about what you said, and I think there's this piece around acceptance also, though, does really it's enmeshed in understanding the external impact. So like you've mentioned, whether that be a belief system, whether it be your own parents, I mean there's so many things that do give us messaging. And so I do think that taking that moment to understand your own personal context and realize that depending on who your parents were, depending on who your peer groups were, depending on all of those different things, those external forces do have impact on
Mm,
how you create those limited beliefs. And so I think there is this, I love this moment, and I just want to just reiterate it, where that plays such a role in getting you to be able to then accept, okay, all of this is true and I'm pretty amazing still. And here's what I'm going to do with my amazing beautiful self. Because that those aren't, they're not excuses, but they are realities that help you, I guess I would say they help you understand yourself better.
mhm.
And then from understanding self, can we move to acceptance? Does that make sense the way I've just tried to share
God,
that?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it really is that introspective view of things. And it's actually interesting. Um, and this is after so many years of really digging in. I now see those that attack me as interesting vessels that I wonder what they're thinking and what type of impact they think they're going to have on me because I don't let them into my realm with their negativity. However, the fact of the matter is there are external powers that can hurt us. You can't ignore the fact that you don't have the power or the control over every aspect of your life. It is coming from external sources. But you also need to know that you're going to be all right because
Mm.
everything is temporary.
Yeah,
Everything is
yeah,
temporary.
it is. And I have to share with you, what you just described made me think of like one of my, I have this incredible therapist, and what she calls those people that you just mentioned who still attack you or treat you in a certain way. She would call them asshole angels. And so I am like loving what I saw. I go, oh, there's that asshole angel again, which is meaning they're an asshole, but for you, they're like an angel because they remind
Yeah,
you to double down in knowing who you are or why you're great, or they're teaching you something, right? So sometimes when you are the most dysregulated because somebody's been such an asshole, like there's some learning in that for you to be like, what is that? What part of that is it hitting? Am I starting to self-doubt? Like right in that moment, if someone's such an asshole that you start to be like, oh my God, and you start to self-doubt, you go, wait a minute, right? No, no, right? The angel part is, no, I know I'm amazing. They're just an asshole, but I appreciate that they got me to cross check and double down on what I know to be true. So there's something beautiful about asshole angels that does, like you said, just reiterate getting you back to self-love. And sometimes it doesn't feel good, but I love now she has given me that power to call them asshole angels. And man, it helps me when I'm like, woo, there's that asshole angel. All
I
right.
love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I am invoking asshole angel as
Yeah.
something that is dear to my heart.
Yeah.
And it's so, their insecurities, incredible. They are not yours. They are
They're
not
not
yours.
about you.
But man, do they teach us lessons. Do I
Yes.
they just awaken us. And the thing about it, guys, remember that some of these asshole angels do it in micro bites. You think that they're going along really normal, and then it's like they shank you. And they give you a bolt, and you're just like, what happened? And that's a form of manipulation. And you don't need to take that in.
Yeah.
Just say, thank you, asshole angel. I
Thank you,
just
asshole
know who
angel.
you are.
Yes. And I know it's not about me, and I'm gonna learn from this, right? It gets you right back to self-love
Yep.
and acceptance. And I think, and it's a lifelong journey. Like
Yeah.
there will never be a day where I am not going to encounter, or not a day. I mean, I hope there's days that I don't encounter an asshole angel. There will be days that I don't encounter an asshole angel. I mean, there won't be like in my lifetime. I'm never going to be free from that because I'm going to be a human that is always growing. And I hope that, on my very last day, I'm still trying to learn something and grow. And so for those of us who have a growth mindset, who are lifelong learners, who are constantly seeking to understand and grow ourselves as humans, then we will always find asshole angels, right? We will always be learning. And so that's there's something about that feels really uh, kind of lovely to know that and be like, these are just lessons in my life. I'm never gonna and there it takes some of the pressure off. We don't ever, I think we've talked about it, and I think we can talk about it again, but we never arrive. There's no like
Mm-mm.
moment that you
No.
finish your work and you're done. Like it just doesn't happen. And I know I've mentioned my dad, and he's, closer to death than I am for sure. And he is still learning and still, like taking these beautiful nuggets, and I'm trying to collect them now because he's saying them. And I just think, gosh, if I can just be a lifelong learner and still learning, like at the very nth hour, then I feel like that's something beautiful, and I hope to be like that. So I encourage all of our listeners to just, I mean, this has been a really like a deep, important topic on so many levels. But I think one thing I kind of as I think about this conversation, one, I want to be in conversation about this stuff, right? This is the real stuff. This is the hard stuff. This is what I think life is all about, is getting us to self-love, to understand ourselves, to then be able to connect more deeply with other humans, to continue to learn. I mean, I'm learning every single time you're in conversation with another human, you have an opportunity to learn something if you stay open. And then I get excited about thinking how we can remind ourselves of this as we go on a journey that's not always beautiful and doesn't always feel good. But if we can remind ourselves that there's something to be learned here that will enhance, how I show up as a human, that feels a lot better. That's for sure.
When I do my speaking engagements, I always say, um, it's imperative that you learn, you grow, and then you create. And when I say create, I mean create who you want to be from that learning. and understand that you can never silence your voice. You can't stop being authentic. You must be able to speak your truth. And that doesn't mean that you are controversial or trying to, cause disruption. It means that you are your authentic self and that you don't take it as a side bystander in your own life. Everybody loves saying the main character. I don't really like that because for me, it's just being me.
Eh,
I don't have to be a main character.
no, and
It doesn't make
I
sense to me.
I grabbed her again to be like, for those of you listening that aren't seeing me, I grabbed my very broken, literally beheaded, gritty, peaceful soul because it's like what we are is our own beautifully broken selves, all of us.
Exactly. Perfectly
We're
imperfect.
perfectly imperfect.
So as we were talking, songs kept running through my head. And I have two that I'm thinking as our joy note songs for this episode. And the first one was Perfectly Imperfect by
Ha!
Ada. Yeah, by Ada Pashmak. And it's an indie artist and it's kind of a catchy tune. And she talks in the beginning of the song of how totally she's imperfect. Everybody's doing better than she is, but she's perfect at that moment because she's learning who she is. And I just think it's fabulous. That's the way life really is. And then the second song that I came to mind is by Ann Nesby. And this is a song that I've been playing all weekend. And the song is I See Beyond. And it's about don't worry about your imperfections today because what's coming up ahead is so magical, so beyond your understanding. And, in her songs, she says, all my pain, they're okay because what's coming up is so much better. So we can do this. We can
We
take
can
care
do
of
this.
ourselves. What do the gratitude rocks say?
Let's see. Shaking it around for those that can only listen. Let's see. Oh, we joked. So I felt like he was trying to get away from me. I'm like, all right, no, this is the one. Okay, so it's a really beautiful deep brown color, and the word is easeful.
Wow. We've had that
So
before. You're going to have to define it for our audience.
this easeful gets a lot of play. A lot of people ask what that word is, and just the beauty is, I usually say, "What do you think it is?" And then that creates a lot of beautiful. So I would ask our listeners to sit with that word, to think, what does it mean when I say the word easeful? Um, might it mean full of ease? Might it mean easy? What does it mean? And I think that for us, it's perfectly imperfect. Our imperfect word is easeful because people really struggle with the word. It's not, is it a word? Is it not a word? Is it right there? They're trying to get that. And we're saying it's whatever. It's imperfect, the word easeful. It's whatever you want it to be. For me, it feels lovely. It's like it just lets things flow. It's like I'm gonna just be with ease. I'm gonna travel through my life with ease, and I'm going to keep learning and growing with ease, and live an easeful life. But I love that this word that causes so much um, kind of conversation fits to the perfectly imperfect conversation that we've had today.
Totally
Easeful.
agree. Easeful is, to me, graceful. It's being in a flow of grace. As we flow through joy and gratitude, catch us next time.